Major funding for this program is provided by the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation and the Morris Foundation. Additional funding is from the C. Lewis and Mary C. Cabe Foundation and the Monroe Foundation.
Every town is populated by the ghosts of its history. Usually they're hidden beneath layers of modern development or folded in the files of the local historical society. Here in Hot Springs, Arkansas, the ghosts are easy to find, but sometimes hard to believe. Stand on Central Avenue and face the old Arlington Hotel. You'll sense a fading elegance that lingers from a more glamorous time. A time when the hotel's guest list included presidents and prize fighters, gamblers and gangsters, and anyone in between who was somebody. You have to look beyond the surface and listen to the ghosts to understand just how hot Hot Springs really was. The Wax Museum across the street is really the old Southern Club, a glittering high-stakes casino and entertainment palace. Just one of the many illegal gambling clubs, bars, and brothels that line the western side of Central Avenue's past and blend silently into the antique stores, tourist shops, and art galleries of today. Cross the street and you enter a totally different world. A row of stately bathhouses stand proud, although neglected for years. Reminders of a time when 1 million baths a year were taken by people hoping for better health, believing they would find it here.
I'd like to welcome you all to the vacation capital of Arkansas, Hot Springs National Park, our nation's very first resort.
It's obvious to the most casual visitor's eye, the Spa City is not the town it used to be. Some say it's a better place to live today. Others remember the exciting prosperity of the gambling era and lament the opportunities lost. This is the story of what happened here and why the town changed. It's the story of the people and the ghosts of Hot Springs, Arkansas, who've made their home in a city of visitors. There is only one reason for a town to exist here in this valley of the Ouachita Mountains. For centuries, people have been drawn to this water. Mysteriously, it emerges from a mountainside at an average temperature of 143 degrees Fahrenheit. It is the stuff of legends, powerful enough to build a city. No one knows where the stories began. Some say native people consider this a valley of peace, laying down their weapons and bathing together in the healing water. A romantic notion, probably invented around the same time this statue was placed in the men's bathing hall of the Fordyce bathhouse. It depicts a young Indian maiden welcoming the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto to the springs, although there is little evidence to suggest De Soto was ever here. The first European to see this water was more likely a French fur trapper, one of many who came through here before the Louisiana Purchase. These early visitors told stories about the water's curative properties.
One French resident of Louisiana wrote about several somewhat miraculous cures that he had heard about and had witnessed himself, and he even told a tale of how the bears came down out of the Ouachita Mountains to bathe in the waters to cure themselves of the mange.
President Thomas Jefferson heard about the hot springs. In 1804, 1 year after closing the deal on the Louisiana Purchase, Jefferson authorizes a scientific expedition into the new territory to find and study the legendary water. The expedition's report to Congress is published widely in many eastern newspapers, and though they make no claim for the water's healing properties, this isolated valley in the Ouachita Mountains becomes, in the minds of many Americans, a place of hope.
People were looking for their miracle. They were willing to travel over any kind of obstacles in order to make it to the springs to get a cure.
You know, folks just kind of came here gradually more and more until by 1820, the Territorial Assembly said basically, wait a minute, we are afraid that this potential boon for suffering mankind will be monopolized, as have some of the medicinal springs farther east. And we send this memorial, kind of like petition to Congress, to request that it be set aside.
4 sections of land, with the hot springs as near the center as may be, are hereby reserved as set apart for future disposal by the U.S. government.
The people began to collect here to attend the springs and use the waters during the warm weather. We have some dreadful sights. Cripples from all parts of the world, and some of them are certainly natural curiosities. Hiram Whittington, Hot Springs, 1833.
They were just bathing in the streams to begin with. And then they wanted to be a little more private, and they would throw up a little shack, and for maybe a quarter you could go there and undress and put on some light clothing and lay in the creek bed, and it looked like that they had just thrown up a bunch of shacks along the creek.
They really didn't put any signs up explaining who owned the place and who was supposedly running it. So things developed willy-nilly.
Questionable ownership doesn't stop some entrepreneurs from building on the springs. By 1841, John Cyrus Hale is operating a hotel and bathhouse on government land he claims to own. Henry Rector, a future governor of the state, challenges Hale's claim with a land grant inherited from his father and builds a tavern and a bathhouse nearby.
The very early bathhouses were sometimes built directly over springs, and steam would come up through the floorboards. But if you look at some of the stereograph cards, and you look at the bathhouse, what they were calling bathhouses back then, you see these wooden troughs or flumes carrying the water down from the springs and into bathhouses. And this was before Hot Springs Creek was covered over. There were piles of boards everywhere and junk being thrown in the creek. In fact, there were cattle and pigs wandering around making it into the photos. And these were photos that were being used to really advertise a spa.
Let each come here, for here alone exists the power to save. Here, tottering forms, but skin and bone, are rescued from the grave.
More and more visitors come. The hotels and boarding houses are full, with guests from as far away as New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. The last leg of their journey has probably been by stagecoach from Little Rock, a 50-mile rumble that by 1860 takes only 12 hours. The town's population has reached 201 citizens, and the future looks promising, fueled by the miraculous water bubbling constantly from the side of Hot Springs Mountain. The only question is, who owns it? The Civil War interrupts everything. When Arkansas secedes from the Union, the governor of the state is none other than Henry Rector from Hot Springs. By 1862, federal troops have moved within 100 miles of Little Rock and are threatening the capital city. Governor Rector panics and takes himself and all the state's records to his home in Hot Springs. For 2 months, the town is the unofficial capital of Arkansas. Like most of the state, Hot Springs is decimated by the war, looted, burned, and ransacked by both armies and roving gangs of bushwhackers. The town is almost deserted.
But after the Civil War, there were so many soldiers on both sides that had been injured, and they were looking for something to help their suffering, and that was when Hot Springs really started to grow.
Visitors just almost immediately started coming. Number of visitors started doubling each year right after the war.
The question of who owns the springs is finally answered on April 24, 1876. The U.S. Supreme Court rules that none of the claims by individuals are valid. Albert Pike, the lawyer who argues Henry Rector's case, is disappointed by the decision.
I thought success was certain. I knew the law and facts were on my side. The court did not decide according to the law, but that the hot springs were too valuable for an individual to own.
It did result in a drastic shrinking of the boundaries. They shrank it down from 4 square miles to basically just a piece of Hot Springs Mountain and a couple of outlying areas.
The springs remain federal property. Private bathhouse owners may use the water by building on land leased from the government. The permanence of the decision makes investing in the bathing industry a safer bet, and Hot Springs becomes a boom town.
I think the bathing industry drove the growth of the city. You have all these new bathhouses that are built following the Supreme Court decision, and you have these nice, wonderful hotels.
By 1875, the largest and most elegant hotel in Arkansas is in Hot Springs, the Arlington, financed by Colonel Samuel W. Fordyce, a veteran of the Union Army and successful businessman who believes the hot springs saved his life. The Arlington's rooms are lit by gas, and each is connected to the front desk by an electric bell.
The story was that the Arlington Hotel never had to buy firewood for its fireplaces because so many crutches were simply left behind by all the people who had been cured.
Joseph Diamond Joe Reynolds is another prosperous Yankee putting his mark on the Southern Spa. Racked with rheumatism and frustrated by a bone-jarring stagecoach journey to the town, Reynolds decides to build his own railroad connecting Hot Springs to the Iron Mountain Rail Station in Malvern. Known affectionately as the Diamond Joe, the narrow-gauge line features luxury passenger cars outfitted with the best furnishings of the day. Connected now to the modern world by rail, Hot Springs becomes more than a destination for the desperate.
The time will soon come when Hot Springs will not only be an invalid's retreat, but a fashionable watering place.
Charles Cutter's vision of Hot Springs is spread across America and the world by a series of travel guides he begins publishing in 1874. Cutter guides a new clientele to the water, ladies looking for the fountain of youth.
Those who feel the heavy hand of time being placed upon them, and their looking glass reveals wrinkles and mole patches, can, by bathing in and drinking of these waters, so improve their complexion as to appear several years younger than their actual age.
It's been 10 years since the end of the Civil War, and thanks to this water, the wounds inflicted on Hot Springs have healed faster than any place in the South. The town is thriving. The economy of Hot Springs is geared to serving the needs of its visitors, and they have many needs.
When people come to take the baths, that's not very time-consuming or entertaining, So they naturally wanted something to do. And so various kinds of entertainment, including gambling, including other maybe illegal kinds of fun, also developed along with that.
Hot Springs became known as a place to go, you know. If you gotta have medical treatment, go there and have a good time.
The springs brought people to the area, and it brings a different kind of people for different reasons. With all of these different kinds of people visiting, partaking of the waters, that is a concern, because with the good, sometimes you get the bad.
Our town is now being flooded with lewd and immoral characters who infest our streets day and night, and by their obscene carriage and vulgar language, render it absolutely disagreeable for persons of respectability to be on the streets. Petition to incorporate Hot Springs, 1875.
So you got 18 saloons, you've got a number of houses of prostitution, and they weren't trying to keep them closed on Sunday. People couldn't get out and go to church without seeing drunks laying on the sidewalk and streetwalkers and things like this. So they've finally had enough.
By incorporating the city in 1875, citizens are hoping the new laws and the police force will bring a measure of control to the wild side of town. On the verge of becoming America's most popular resort, only one thing is certain: there is plenty of hot water ahead for everyone. The year is 1877. If you have come as a visitor to Hot Springs, Arkansas, you're probably sick and desperate for a cure.
I think you could have sensed the hope in the air as people got off at the train station. No matter how much money you had, if you were hurting, you wanted to do what you could to get better. And if it involved coming down to Arkansas, especially right after the Civil War, just 20, 30 years later, I think that took a lot of faith. You just would have had that in the atmosphere here.
On the hillside above the town, more than 50 springs pour forth the legendary hot water. Each has been named to reflect the particular benefits it may offer. The Magnesia Springs and the Arsenic Springs are reportedly rich in these minerals. The Kidney and the Liver Springs are said to be good for those vital organs. The Cornhole is popular with folks afflicted with bunions and other maladies of the feet. The women soak in the morning, the men in the afternoon. A row of new Victorian bathhouses cater to the needs of those who can afford to bathe indoors. While on the hillside behind Bathhouse Row, a scattering of tents and shanties is home for a growing number of people bathing in the open communal springs.
Some with contracted or crooked legs or arms, enlarged or swollen joints, gout, scrofulous taint or skin diseases. The white man and the colored man are often seen sitting together, bathing their feet and legs, as everyone has undisputed right to bathe in this pool.
Some of these folks might well have been Civil War veterans. They certainly were not folks who had a great deal of money. They couldn't afford a bath ticket down on the row. They intercepted the water and used water at the actual springs higher up on the hillside before it made it down to the paying customers. That did not please the bathhouse owners.
When General Benjamin Kelly arrives as the first superintendent of the Hot Springs Reservation, he orders all squatters and trespassers on federal property be removed.
There was something called an indignation meeting that these folks held, in which they threatened to come back and lynch General Kelly.
Kelly provides for the construction of a government-free bathhouse over the old mud hole spring to guarantee everyone access to the thermal water. Of all the ailments treated by the springs, one of the most common is a disease people don't discuss in public. They call it neuralgia.
That was sometimes a code word. The joke was when somebody said, "I've got neuralgia," the other person, suspecting what they meant, would say, "Well, I've got the old ralgia." And obviously that meant venereal disease of some kind.
As the federal government takes over direct supervision of the reservation, the general appearance of Hot Springs begins to improve dramatically. An archway is built to cover Hot Springs Creek, making Central Avenue wider and more attractive, with new landscaping around the bathhouses. Down the street, the Hot Springs Opera House has just opened. Financed by Sam Fordyce, the theater is packed nightly, with patrons enjoying plays direct from New York, performed by the leading actors of the day. According to the town's new ordinances, gambling is against the law in Hot Springs. But by 1883, there are 7 gambling houses on Central Avenue, all of them controlled by one man, Frank Flynn.
Frank soon got the attention of politicians by kicking back to them and letting him be the boss to say whether or not anybody else got to come in and open up a gambling establishment or not.
A problem arises in 1884 when Major S.A. Duran comes to town and opens a new gambling hall without the blessing of Frank Flynn. For weeks, Hot Springs is held hostage by a simmering feud between the two gamblers. It finally erupts on Central Avenue when a horse-drawn cab carrying Flynn and his 2 brothers is ambushed by Duran's hired gunmen. The shooting leaves 3 people lying mortally wounded on the town's main street.
The community really got upset, and they organized what they called the Committee of 13. And it was a committee that was instructed to run all the gamblers out of town. And they did it at bayonet point.
And it seemed to work in those early years, that they were able to get rid of the folks that they perceived to be causing problems for their image. And they did want this nice, squeaky clean image, but yet they wanted people to know that they could have a good time as well.
A good time for many visitors to Hot Springs includes drinking, prostitution, and gambling, all of which are illegal and some say immoral. With a growing economy based more and more on entertaining the bathers, there is a continual debate in town about how openly to allow these illegal activities to operate. Open or closed is usually the only issue on Election Day.
You had the church people voting for morality. You had the other people, and some of them were church people, that were voting for the gambling because they had a business downtown that relied on the visitors. There for a while, the town was pretty balanced each way. And each election of the mayor would bring forth a change in the attitude. If you elected a liberal mayor, for the next 2 years you were going to have gambling, because the mayor appointed the chief of police, and between the mayor and the chief of police, they pretty well controlled the attitude in downtown Hot Springs.
In 1899, Tom Toller is chief of police in Hot Springs, but he's worried about his job because of the upcoming mayor's election. He's heard that Bob Williams, the popular county sheriff is supporting a candidate for mayor who's promised to make his brother the new city police chief, giving control of the entire county to one family. The election boils down to a struggle between city and county police over who will control and profit from the illegal activities in town. On March 16, 1899, in a bar on Central Avenue, the escalating feud explodes in a brutal shootout between city police and county deputies. 3 men are killed instantly, including Chief Toller. The son of Sheriff Williams lies dying in the street. Hearing the gunshots, City Police Detective Jim Hart arrives minutes after the carnage is over.
He gets back just in time for Bob Williams to arrive. Williams sees his son lying there dying, and he grabs this detective and sticks his gun under his chin and blows the top of his head off. It emptied the town like nothing. 2 gunfights in one day and 5 people killed. It was unbelievable.
The story hits the New York Times front page and as far away as Sacramento. The Arkansas Democrat's headline screams, "City drenched in blood." Time and the water heals everything in Hot Springs. Streams of visitors flow in from everywhere, undeterred by the town's risky reputation.
Yeah, it was, but I think that adds to the charm of the spa, that these things are going on, but yet it's a great place to go. It's fun.
Amid all the pleasant diversions, Hot Springs remains a serious health treatment center. An Army-Navy hospital operates at full capacity. The reservation now has a medical director who sets standards and guidelines for the treatment of bathers. Many come with a doctor's prescription for a series of baths, lasting as long as 3 weeks. Others are here just to relax because bathing has become fashionable.
Crowds swarm in these baths. The Negro attendants scramble at the bidding of the bathers. A man becomes a creature of 3 conditions. He is about to take a bath. He is taking a bath. He has taken a bath. Stephen Crane, Hot Springs.
By the early 1900s, the most exclusive bathhouses are evolving into palaces of luxury, and the hotels are equally opulent. In a poor southern state still struggling to emerge from the Civil War, Hot Springs, Arkansas is a thriving cosmopolitan playground for America's elite.
Oh my goodness, anybody who was anybody came to Hot Springs. It was the place to be because all the other celebrities were here.
Glittering stars of film and stage, politicians, presidents, prize fighters, the giants of commerce and industry, they're all here in Hot Springs. Once a year, the hotels are invaded by pirates and Indians and Red Sox. In town for spring training. Babe Ruth uses the baths to boil off the excesses of the off-season. It is 1913. The mayor of Hot Springs is the aptly named W.W. Waters. He's a liberal, so the gambling clubs are wide open and going strong.
Businesses were booming. In 1913, it was a good year until things began to happen.
Bob Williams is still the county sheriff. Like the mayor, he's also been lenient toward gambling. But his attitude changes when he realizes Hot Springs is being infested with visitors who are not here for the baths, just the money. Con men.
They'd come in and they'd do their game and get the money and take off. And they hit wealthy people. They thought that the wealthy people would be so embarrassed that they wouldn't complain about it.
They are wrong about Frank Fox, an Indiana oil man and race car driver. When Fox is swindled out of $20,000 in Hot Springs, he hires the famous Burns Detective Agency to get his money back.
Burns sends a bunch of private detectives down here, and that was one thing that upset Bob Williams. He finds out that the Burns people are down here, as he said, looking under all the rocks, no telling what they're going to find.
Sheriff Williams tells Mayor Waters it's time to close the gambling clubs until things cool down. But the gamblers are getting mixed messages.
Waters was telling the clubs it's okay to stay open, and Williams was saying close down or we're going to close you down.
Williams goes on a rampage, raiding the clubs that remain open, hauling away expensive equipment, busting it up, and burning it on the courthouse lawn. He shuts down every gambling house in town, including the Ohio Club, owned by his brother. A local newspaper describes it as the gloomiest day of the year. Frank Fox never gets his money back, but more victims come forward claiming they too were scammed in Hot Springs.
The businessmen are appalled because the word's out all over the country. This is hitting the national newspapers about Hot Springs being a place where you can go down there and the con artists are out to get you as soon as you get off the train.
By April, W.W. Waters has lost the mayor's election to Dr. Jacob McClendon, who runs on a platform of strict law enforcement. For now, any gambling in Hot Springs will be hidden in the back rooms of the bars. That is, in the ones still standing after September 5th, 1913. On that day, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a small fire is reported in a cottage on Church Street. It spreads quickly, fed by the neighboring frame houses. Unusually high winds push the flames across 50 blocks of the city. It is the most destructive fire in Arkansas history. No one is killed, but nearly 1,000 buildings are lost, and more than 2,000 people are homeless.
Many of the folks didn't have insurance on their businesses or their homes. Huge areas of the town were destroyed, but people were always quick to rebuild. And interestingly, it had little impact on people coming to visit. They still came in. They heard about the fire. Well, let's go anyway.
The images of Hot Springs captured in these home movies from the 1920s suggest a modern, urban community where families have plenty of places to go and things to do. It looks cosmopolitan and comfortable. But the lynching of a black man on Central Avenue in 1922 reminds everyone that Hot Springs is still a small, segregated southern town. And yet, hundreds of African Americans are coming here because Hot Springs is different.
It was a place where you could educate your children, you could build your houses. By being a tourist town, there was a different kind of attitude between the blacks and the whites here that you would not necessarily find anyplace else. There was this attitude of openness, and then all the money was coming from tourists. No one wants to visit and be a part of your tourist town if there's conflict going on any level They come to rest and to relax, and everybody, quote unquote, knew their place, because as long as they kept their place, the money would come in and everybody would profit from that.
One of the things we always enjoyed doing as kids was walking down Central Avenue, looking at the license plates on all of the cars. Here's one from New Hampshire. Here's one from Iowa. Faraway places with strange sounding names, The people in Hot Springs were very lucky, because in other small Arkansas towns, the people left in order to receive the culture. The culture came to Hot Springs.
African Americans are not welcome as customers on Bathhouse Row. But most of the bath attendants are black, except at the Buck staff, which specializes in all-white attendance. There are places a black visitor can go to bathe in the thermal water. If you're poor, there's the government-free bathhouse. If you have money, you might visit the Pythian, in the heart of the town's thriving black commercial district.
It's almost this secret that for African Americans, Hot Springs was a resort place where African Americans could go and do exactly what white people were doing. They did horseback riding, they played tennis, they swam, they gambled, they bought clothes. If there was a need for something, somebody started a business.
Most of the businesses line both sides of Malvern Avenue, a street often referred to as Black Broadway.
Well, it was real nice, because the streets would be full of people standing around, talking, looking. There was always a lot of activity, because that was where people went. And people who came from all over talked about the quality of the hotels. They all were owned and operated by blacks.
The promise of the water continues to draw people from across the country to Hot Springs. Recently named by Congress as America's 18th national park, the town experiences a steady growth in the numbers of visitors fueling the local economy. But the city government is struggling financially. Already strapped by the costs of rebuilding the town after the devastating fire of 1913, Hot Springs is hit by a combination of fires and flood in 1923. The Arlington Hotel has burned, but is rising on an even grander scale at a new location across the street from the springs. Prohibition has closed the bars in town and made the hills of Garland County the most active bootlegging region in the state. Many miss the days when the illegal gambling clubs were wide open and the money flowed more freely down Central Avenue. Some say the town is stagnant and needs the energy of open gambling to thrive. Thus, the mayor's election of 1927 presents the voters of Hot Springs with a familiar choice: an open or a closed town. In the spring of 1927, Leo P. McLaughlin is a young city attorney in Hot Springs when he is convinced to run for mayor by Vern Ledgerwood, the city's municipal judge. McLaughlin is a good campaigner, and he and Judge Ledgerwood have a plan for the town.
He would tell the people, the other night up at the Arlington Hotel, I walked out on the veranda, looked down the street, and he said I could have fired a Winchester rifle down the street and not hit a soul. Everything was closed up. And he says, if I'm elected, we're going to revitalize the downtown area and we're going to open it up. He never did come out and say, we're going to have gambling here, but everybody understood what he was talking about.
It is a heated and bitter campaign, One local bank agrees to hold over $50,000 in bets made on the outcome of the election. Those who bet on Leo are the winners, as McLaughlin narrowly becomes the new mayor of Hot Springs.
Now, Leo had a failing all the way through his life. Was anyone opposed him, he was an enemy from then on. Ledgerwood wasn't quite that way. He says, I think we've got an opportunity here to meet with these fellows, and if we tell them that we will support them, if they'll support us, that we can capture the entire county. All the people that are under me, I'm going to encourage them to support you if you'll encourage all of your people to support us. Now, we can take it a step further. They need their jobs, and each employee came to understand that his job was dependent on it. They knew that if you didn't vote for the right candidate, that they'd know it. There was no secret ballot in Garland County.
With the unspoken blessing of both county and city officials, open gambling returns to Hot Springs. This time, only a limited number of clubs will be allowed to operate. All gambling will be controlled by one man, W.S. Bill Jacobs, who has an agreement with McLaughlin and Ledgerwood.
Let's keep it on a local basis. Do not let foreign money come in here and get control of it, and then first thing you know, we'll be out of it.
Although gambling is now open, it is still illegal. Twice a month, the gamblers voluntarily come before Judge Ledgerwood's court, plead guilty, and pay their fines for gambling. The first two charges are misdemeanors, but the third conviction is a felony. To avoid this, they simply change their last names in the court record. 1 month, everyone's named after a color. The next month, a type of automobile or agricultural product. Money from the gambling fines begins to help the city's finances, giving Mayor McLaughlin the means to make improvements in the town without raising taxes. When the people suggest giving the mayor a raise,
he would tell them, no, don't worry about giving Leo a raise. Leo will get his one of these days, or words to that effect. People knew that he was being taken care of by the gambling community.
From all appearances, Leo P. McLaughlin is the perfect mayor for Hot Springs.
He was a very nice-looking man. He was tall, fairly thin, always impeccably dressed. He wore his hat cocked on the side with this side down and this side up. Always wore a boutonniere. Loved publicity. Loved having his picture in the paper.
Leo is becoming one of the town's most popular tourist attractions, with his daily carriage rides downtown, pulled by his horses, scotch, and soda.
The word would go down Central Avenue, the mayor's on his way up, and by the time he'd get to the Arlington Hotel, people would boil out on the street, and he'd pull his buggy over and shake hands with everybody, and they loved it. And he was Mr. Hot Springs.
Like all forms of gambling, betting on horse races is against the law in Arkansas. The Oaklawn Racetrack in Hot Springs has been closed for over 15 years. Nevertheless, in 1933, Mayor McLaughlin encourages a group of businessmen to stage a short, quiet racing season at Oaklawn Park, with no wagering, of course. It is enormously successful. The tract sends a percentage of the illegal profits to the state of Arkansas as a voluntary income tax. It's enough to persuade the state legislature to allow betting on the thoroughbreds to continue legally at Oaklawn for a limited time each year. And Hot Springs becomes a city that moves to the rhythms of the racing season when the numbers of visitors multiply. During McLaughlin's first 3 terms in office, the Hot Springs skyline has been transformed by a new Army-Navy hospital and the 16-story Medical Arts Building, Arkansas's first skyscraper.
And this is all in the midst of the Depression. Whether we agree with McLaughlin and his machine's tactics, whether we like him and what he stood for, we can't argue with how many improvements took place in the city itself during his time in office, because things just changed greatly.
Downtown Hot Springs buzzes 24 hours a day during the racing season. And every night there's a full house at the Belvedere, a glittering new cabaret and casino boss gambler W.S. Jacobs has opened on the outskirts of town. Featuring gourmet food and big-name entertainment, Club Belvedere caters strictly to the high rollers.
It's maddening. Count Ray running neck and neck.
Into the stretch. It's maddening. First by less than a length. Flutter up. Young John moving up on the outside. Northern Star is fading.
And Young John running stride.
On warm days, a chorus of unusual sounds can be heard drifting from the open windows of the gambling clubs on Central Avenue, as the results from horse races across the country are announced to the gamblers inside.
The 7th race at the Santa Anita racetrack. The winner is the number 3 horse, Matthew.
One of the most famous of the horse books is operated across the street from the Arlington Hotel, upstairs in the Southern Club.
I can never be there in front of the Arlington and close to Arlington Park in the Southern without immense nostalgia, feeling that I have come home.
Shirley Abbott is a writer from New York who grew up in Hot Springs. She returns occasionally to visit with family and to remember her father, who worked at the Southern Club handling bets as the cashier.
He always was so well turned out. I mean, he dressed just like a banker to go downtown and work in this illegal business. It was such an exotic world that my father worked in. And I knew it was illegal. I knew he could be arrested any day. When I said goodbye to him on a summer morning and he went off uptown in his ice cream suit, my mother and I both knew that he might be in jail by the end of the day, but we were proud of him anyway. Everybody in town knew what was going on. There was no illusion about that. I mean, you couldn't not know. And we knew that we were thriving off something that was completely against the law. And a lot of people really loved that. And would say, well, you know, this is what keeps the town prosperous. Where would we be without it? We have to have this. We have to have it.
And Hot Springs was a new world for a country boy from Columbia County.
When Sid McMath's family moves to Hot Springs on his 10th birthday, he finds a job selling newspapers on Bathhouse Row.
Central Avenue was a very busy, that was downtown. And that's where a lot of the bookies and the gambling houses were and so forth. And they were good places to sell papers, because so many times you go in there and sell a guy a paper, if the paper's a nickel, he'll give you a quarter and he'll hit you on the head and say, boy, keep it changed, see?
As a young man growing up in Hot Springs, McMath is exposed at an early age to the dark side of politics in his hometown.
This young girl that I was going with, whose father was a contractor and whose brother was a partner of his. The brother ran for sheriff against McLaughlin's candidate. He lost. It was a hotly contested sheriff's race, and he was a powerful campaigner and a popular individual. But within a few weeks after the election was over, he was lured into a back alley and assassinated. And then I had another friend, I was in high school still, whose father ran for mayor against McLaughlin. And his mortgage was due, and they took over his mortgage and foreclosed on his house. So if you oppose the McLaughlin administration, and if you're vulnerable in any respect, you could be punished.
Somehow, McMath avoids becoming cynical about politics, just more interested. After graduating with a law degree from the University of Arkansas and serving a year in the Marine Corps, McMath comes home to Hot Springs to practice law. Most of his first cases are tried in courtrooms controlled by the McLaughlin administration.
And I saw how it worked. He was the boss. He called the shots. They did what they were supposed to do. The thing that concerned me was why they could get away with this, why this could happen in what we call a free society. And I resolved then that I, for one, would endeavor to do something about it.
Visitors to Hot Springs aren't too concerned about the town's politics. Many are here because of illness, hoping the hot water will cure them. The number of baths given on Bathhouse Row is approaching 1 million a year. The town's new slogan is, "We bathe the world." In 1936, Hot Springs swells with pride and people as President Franklin Roosevelt comes to town to celebrate Arkansas's 100th birthday. As the nation's most popular health resort, the city is accustomed to entertaining the rich and the famous, as well as the rich and the infamous, a roll call of America's most notorious gangsters.
And they thought, wow, if it's that hot, we better be going there too. All the rich people in America go there, and they bring their private railroad cars down to Hot Springs, and they got gambling and liquor down there, and they can go to Hot Springs and no one knows who they are.
Mayor McLaughlin welcomes the shady visitors with some conditions.
Fellows, come on down and have a good time. Do not hassle the local people. Spend your money, get out on the lakes and fish, use our golf courses, have a good time, but don't create any problems.
Al Capone is one of the first gangsters to discover the relaxing pleasures of Hot Springs, reserving the entire 4th floor of the Arlington Hotel for his entourage. Capone gambles at the Southern Club, parties with the prostitutes, and takes the baths, possibly to ease his suffering from syphilis. One of Hot Springs' newest residents is Oni Madden, a gang leader from New York City, former owner of the Cotton Club, and convicted murderer. After being exiled from New York, Madden retires to Hot Springs, marries the postmaster's daughter, and becomes a model citizen. Mayor McLaughlin and Judge Ledgerwood are quick to visit Madden to explain that he's welcome here as long as he stays out of the local gambling business.
My father spoke of Oni Madden in a way that let me know that Oni Madden was a man to be feared, and that Oni Madden was a man with lots of power. He said, you know, they say Oni Madden just lives here. that he's, you know, happily married to a nice Hot Springs girl and he's just another citizen, but that's not so.
Madden can usually be found in the afternoon, sitting at his favorite table in the Southern Club. Every gangster who comes to town makes a point to check in with Oni. Most come just to relax, but some are wanted fugitives, hiding from the law. And they've heard the Hot Springs Police Department is willing to help for a price. In June of 1933, Hot Springs Police Chief Joe Wakelin is alarmed to hear that FBI agents have arrested Frank Jelly Nash on Central Avenue and are taking him to Kansas City. Wanted for bank robbery, Nash has been paying Wakelin and his chief of detectives, Dutch Akers, protection money. In Kansas City, as the agents are taking Nash from the car, they are gunned down by mobsters, tipped off by someone in Hot Springs. After the Kansas City massacre, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover does not trust the Hot Springs Police Department. His suspicions are confirmed 3 years later, when one of America's most wanted criminals is arrested here, despite the efforts of local police to protect him. Indicted for running a prostitution ring by the state of New York, Charles Lucky Luciano heads for Hot Springs, where a vacationing New York City policeman accidentally spots him, strolling down Central Avenue with none other than Detective Dutch Akers. Luciano is arrested by the county sheriff, and his bond is set at $2,500. He reaches in his pocket, pays it off, and is released. New York Attorney General Thomas Dewey cannot believe what is happening in Hot Springs. He calls Arkansas Governor Marion Futrell and demands that Luciano be extradited to New York. Governor Futrell is an old fishing buddy of Judge Ledgerwood's and a friend to Hot Springs.
But the governor does not want any problems coming out of the state of New York, especially over Lucky Luciano. And so he calls the sheriff and says, take that man back in custody and hold him.
Eventually, it takes Arkansas's Attorney General Carl Bailey and a squadron of heavily armed Arkansas State Rangers to pry Lucky Luciano from the grasp of the Garland County authorities and return him to New York. In the meantime, the FBI has been closing in on Alvin Creepy Karpus, identified by J. Edgar Hoover as Public Enemy Number 1. They know he's somewhere in Hot Springs, but he always seems to be one step ahead of them. When Karpus is finally arrested in New Orleans, there is enough evidence to convict Police Chief Joe Wakelin and Detective Dutch Akers of harboring criminals in Hot Springs. The negative publicity tarnishes the city's image. The state legislature conducts an inquiry into corruption in the Spa City. Newly elected Governor Carl Bailey begins sending state police from Little Rock to raid the gambling clubs. But the gamblers place a lookout at Crow's Station, 20 miles outside of town.
If he saw carloads of state police headed this way, he immediately got on the phone and everything would be dark by the time they got here. They'd be shut down, and they could shut down in a hurry.
The outbreak of World War II seems to turn people's attention away from the problems of Hot Springs, Arkansas. It will be after the war is over before the real fight begins here. In 1945, at the end of World War II, Hot Springs, Arkansas does not appear to be a town on the brink of change. The bathhouses, the city's lifeblood, are operating at full capacity. Bathing in the thermal water is still the primary treatment for many diseases. The town is full of soldiers, bunking in big luxury hotels like the Arlington, transformed temporarily by the military into discharge centers. and Central Avenue is hopping.
But there was life on Central Avenue. People were winning and losing and making noise.
Although illegal, gambling is the city's most lucrative business. And despite the occasional raid by the state police, the casinos and horse books operate openly, with the blessing of the local authorities.
Well, the enemy for my vote is anybody who wanted to put him out of work.
Shirley Abbott's father, Pat Abbott, is one of the hundreds of Hot Springs residents working in the illegal gambling business.
He was always selling me the idea that things weren't what they seemed. That civics book you're studying there says that things work in such and such a way. That's not how they work. Let me tell you how they really work. And then he would explain how things worked in Hot Springs.
How things work in Hot Springs is in the hands of three men: Mayor Leo P. McLaughlin, Municipal Judge Vern Ledgerwood, and Circuit Judge Earl Witt.
So they controlled the court system. They controlled the police system, and they controlled the economy of Hot Springs, because you did not operate a business there without their say-so.
The town catered to wealth and tourists, and that was it. The gambling, the number one thing, and they were corrupt as hell. You know, they were corrupt. You wanted to get something, you paid for it. And once they sold out, they were bought. And that sucked good and honest people in who never thought they'd go that way.
Q. Byram Hurst is one of the GIs returning home to Hot Springs. His father is a local minister and an outspoken critic of McLaughlin and illegal gambling. But the younger Hurst is more dismayed by the lack of opportunity in his hometown for a young lawyer interested in politics.
When we all got home, we were so independent that we didn't know what to do before. But this time we had seen too much during the war, and we had determined to turn Hot Springs over to the people. Sid McMath was the leader.
Sid McMath was a crusader. Sid McMath wanted the change. He is the one who brought the others into it. He is the one who convinced them that they could make a change.
The GIs, as they call themselves, decide to field a slate of candidates to run against the McLaughlin machine in the 1946 Democratic primary election. This will be the first time in 10 years for many of the incumbents to face opposition. But no one in the McLaughlin camp is very worried, because they also control the elections.
They were afraid to vote against McLaughlin's people because they knew that he would know how they voted if he wanted to find out. And of course we had good people in Hot Springs, but they were intimidated.
Intimidation works pretty well in a town like Hot Springs, where the livelihood of so many people depends on illegal activity. But fear is not enough to completely control an election. For that, the McLaughlin machine uses the poll tax, an Arkansas state law that requires a person to pay for the privilege of voting.
It was legal in Arkansas for a person to go to the courthouse, buy a block of poll tax receipts, and give them to whomever. Problem was, if you could do this for legitimate voters, you could also do it for those who were not legitimate voters.
McMath and the GIs know their only hope of winning the election is to expose the blocks of phony poll tax receipts forged by McLaughlin supporters.
They got a list of names. They started going door to door and asking people if they had actually signed these poll tax receipts. Found people who said, "Nope, not me."
When two of their campaign workers are robbed at gunpoint of a briefcase containing evidence of poll tax fraud, the GIs know exactly where to go.
Went to call on the mayor. Had a good visit with him.
They went to Leo's office and told him, look, if you folks want to play rough, we can play rough. And these guys weren't kidding.
We settled that at that time and probably prevented any further confrontations that might have led for trouble.
The administration had blinked.
Just 3 weeks before the primary election, a federal judge rules that more than 1,600 poll tax receipts from Garland County are fraudulent. Despite their efforts, when the votes are counted, all of the GI candidates are defeated, except one. Sid McMath narrowly wins the race for prosecuting attorney.
We knew there was a real crack in the foundation. I mean, it seemed unbelievable with the system being what it was, that someone could actually overturn it.
Encouraged by McMath's success, the GIs decide to run again in the general election, this time as independents. The administration's supporters respond with a campaign of fear.
There were people whose jobs were threatened. I mean, little people, waitresses, gas station attendants, little people who were threatened that if they supported the GIs, they lost their job.
And they'd call us and threaten us, and so just remember, you have a young daughter, you know, things like that. And as I go back now, I really don't see how in the world we got all through it, because at that particular time, it was so important to us, you know. We were just going to go ahead anyway.
The GIs mount a determined and energetic campaign, led by the charismatic McMath.
As I was walking along one evening, I walked, I know, for several blocks, and every house, it seemed, had its radio on, and it was loud enough that I could hear who was speaking, and it was me.
The question now before you is whether you are going to govern yourselves in this community, or if you are to be ruled and regulated by McLaughlin.
And I said, well, now that's encouraging. They've got their radios on, and they don't mind if their neighbors hear it. And so I think we've got a chance to win this thing.
McMath's instincts are true. The GIs capture 6 of the county's most powerful political positions, leaving Mayor McLaughlin and Judge Ledgerwood still holding their city offices, but no longer in control. Unprotected and uncertain about how the GIs will handle illegal gambling, the casinos quietly close down. Vern Ledgerwood decides that after serving 34 years, he will retire as municipal judge. But Leo P. McLaughlin announces he will run again for his 11th consecutive term as mayor. In one of his first acts as prosecuting attorney, Sid McMath calls for a grand jury investigation of corruption in the McLaughlin administration. Indicted on 32 counts, McLaughlin is arrested while sitting in his favorite box seat at Oaklawn Racetrack. He decides to drop out of the mayor's race, ending a reign of 20 years to concentrate on his defense. The trial is moved to Mount Ida, the neighboring county seat, in the hope of finding a jury whose judgment will be unclouded by connections to Hot Springs. The courtroom is packed as the testimony reveals a depth of corruption in the McLaughlin administration that shocks the average citizens of Hot Springs and Arkansas. And every sordid detail is reported by the national press.
One of the most embarrassing things was that Life magazine covered it, and my father had been an avid reader of Life, and here we were being laid out in Life magazine, and it was just almost more than he could bear.
Despite the overwhelming evidence presented by Prosecutor McMath, the jury returns a verdict of not guilty. In an interview recorded late in his life, Vern Ledgerwood remembers how he and Earl Witt did everything they could to influence the jury not to convict.
McLaughlin could have gone to the penitentiary if we hadn't all helped him out there, and he wasn't any more guilty than anybody else. He's been in office, circuit judge, sheriff, and everybody else.
When Leo P. McLaughlin dies in his hometown 10 years later, his house is ransacked and his grave is opened by scavengers searching for his fortune. By the early 1950s, the mysterious thermal water that has nourished the growth of hot springs is beginning to lose its magic. The number of bathers on Bathhouse Row is dropping noticeably every year. With the discovery of antibiotics and other modern medicine, doctors are no longer prescribing the baths. Sid McMath's political star rises quickly. He serves only one term as prosecuting attorney before being elected governor of Arkansas, leaving behind the rest of the GIs to deal with the persistent demand for the return of illegal gambling to hot springs. Some of the GIs are for it.
I really thought the benefit of the county that gambling would, we're so used to it that we had to put up with some of it anyway.
During McMath's tenure as governor, gambling begins to reappear in Hot Springs, but most of it is hidden and out of sight. That all changes in 1954 with the election of a new governor, Orville Eugene Faubus. He sends a different message to Hot Springs.
As he put it, gambling was a local issue and he was not going to have any part in it, meaning, okay, boys, you can open up again. He wasn't too worried about the political fallout because he knew that in the state generally, people just didn't care.
Given the green light from Governor Faubus, gambling returns like never before in Hot Springs. Old clubs reopen and new ones are built. Slot machines are everywhere. There are rumors of a weekly cash payoff from the gamblers delivered directly to the governor's office in Little Rock, but no one can prove it. One thing is certain, gambling is back, and the Spa City has come up with a way to cash in.
The city passed a tax on illegal business. You were paying an amusement tax for running a illegal bar, a house of prostitution, a gambling casino, and they used that like to pay the streets, public works, pay salaries, everything. And so that made it not so much of a crime.
By 1960, the gambling industry in Hot Springs is raking in more than $100 million a year. The owners of the illegal gambling clubs are considered legitimate businessmen in town. They belong to civic organizations and contribute generously to local charities. They build glittering new nightclubs like the Vapors and bring in a variety of big-name entertainers. Many visitors come just for the shows staged in the illegal casinos.
Alta Faubus, Orville's wife, liked to go to Hot Springs, but she knew she wasn't supposed to, and she did not want to be seen there. And she was sitting there with her friend and a kind of bodyguard, I guess, when somebody got the microphone and said, "We have a very distinguished visitor here tonight, Mrs. Faubus. Would you stand up?" Miss Faubus blew her a cover.
The water is not the only thing heating up the Spa City. With gambling open again, Hot Springs becomes a mecca for some of the biggest names in organized crime.
When I transferred with the FBI to Hot Springs, some of the old agents said, "Clay, don't buy a home down there." And I said, "Why?" They said, "Well, you won't be there long." Said, "It's too hot, too much of a hot spot."
It was a 15 to 18 hour a day job. I remember one night getting up, I just threw a suit on over my pajamas and I stayed that way for 2 days, picking up fugitives and going from here to there, and it was a madhouse.
Although gambling is against the law in Arkansas, the FBI agents have no jurisdiction here because there's no federal law against gambling.
Yes, we walked in all the gambling establishments every night practically. Hey, how come this isn't being enforced? anyone that could have closed them. The chief of police, the sheriff, the prosecutor, the judges, the governor.
In Washington, D.C., Hot Springs becomes a hot topic at the Senate hearings on organized crime, chaired by the senator from Arkansas, John McLaughlin. In 1964, the hearings result in the passage of new federal gambling statutes aimed directly at Hot Springs.
I got a call from FBI in Washington. They said 2 individuals, assistant attorney generals, were leaving that day to come to Hot Springs. That night, I took them to some of the casinos. I took them to mainly the Southern Club, the Vapors Club, and the Belvedere. The last place we went to said, "We've seen enough. We don't need to see anymore, so let's go to the motel." So on the way to the motel, they asked me if I could call a press conference the next morning.
At the press conference, the FBI describes Hot Springs as the largest illegal gambling operation in the country. A warning is issued to all elected public officials. Failure to enforce the local laws against gambling is now a federal offense, and a grand jury will soon be investigating those responsible for Hot Springs. The Arkansas State Legislature responds quickly with a resolution calling for all illegal gambling in Hot Springs to be shut down immediately. Governor Faubus agrees, and on March 28, 1964, by order of the governor, all the casinos in Hot Springs closed down. For a while. For the first time in his 10 years as governor, Orville Faubus faces a viable opponent in the upcoming general election, Republican Winthrop Rockefeller, who has adopted Arkansas as his home state and made gambling an issue in the campaign.
And the basis for talking about illegal gambling in Hot Springs was the hypocrisy that it represented. He knew, we all knew, that what was happening is the state police, when they were going to make a raid on Hot Springs, the gamblers would be tipped off, they would hide all their stuff, the raid would take place, nothing would be found, the state police would come back to Little Rock, and the gamblers would get all the slots out and get going again, and business as usual.
Faubus defeats Rockefeller in the 1964 election, and for the next 2 years, the gamblers continue their elusive dance around the occasional visit from the state police. Illegal gambling in Hot Springs becomes a national news story. When a reporter from the Washington Post runs into Governor Faubus at the Arlington Hotel, he asks him about the illegal gambling in town.
And the governor said he didn't know of any illegal gambling in Hot Springs himself. As far as he knew, it was all shut down. The reporter walked out of the Arlington Hotel, crossed Central Avenue, and went into the Southern Club, where the gambling was just wide open that day, middle of the day. But it got to be almost laughable.
Not everyone in Arkansas is laughing. Winthrop Rockefeller decides to run again for governor in 1966, promising to permanently close the illegal gambling in Hot Springs. Orville Faubus announces he will not seek re-election. And in 1966, Winthrop Rockefeller becomes the first Republican to be elected governor of Arkansas in over 90 years.
Yes, I've read in the paper that gambling has reopened in Hot Springs.
The sincerity of his campaign promise is immediately tested by the gamblers in Hot Springs.
If this is brought to your attention, will you use the state police investigative agency to go over and look the situation over?
Yes, I've always taken the attitude, and I certainly proved it by taking my oath of office, that I'll enforce the law. The law does not permit open gambling.
This time, the state police raids will be different.
No tip-offs. We're going to go in there and get the machines, beat them up. Make a big deal out of it. Show people in Hot Springs that we're serious. And that's what he did. It was quick and dirty and clear that this era is over. It's over. And people that weren't gamblers themselves, well-meaning people, business people, you know, in effect prevailed on him to take it easy, Governor. I mean, my goodness, you know, you're killing us, you know, in effect. But he was not dissuaded by any of that. He was determined, and he stayed with it.
Some people said, the town will die. Hot Springs had to find a new identity. The gambling was gone, its entertainment was gone, bathing was in decline. You know, where do we go from here?
Many in Hot Springs believe the only hope for the city's economic future is for the state to legalize gambling.
The people of this state, I mean all the people of this state, said we do not, absolutely do not, unequivocally, do not want gambling in Hot Springs and in Garland County.
Somehow, despite vocal opposition, State Senator Q. Byram Hurst manages to get a gambling bill passed by both houses of the state legislature. When the bill goes to Governor Rockefeller, it sits on his desk until the day before it will become law without his signature. Rockefeller vetoes it, ending all hope of legalizing gambling in Hot Springs. Hot Springs has always been a town with a split personality. Today, the horses are still running at Oaklawn Park.
Come on, Juan.
And like the old horse books, you can bet on races from all over the country. But there's no more gambling on Central Avenue. The old Southern Club is a wax museum, and the Vapors is a church. On Malvern Avenue, the National Baptist Building, where once upon a time Duke Ellington's band played late into the night, is boarded up, and Black Broadway is just a memory. People still believe there's something special about this water, and visitors line up to bottle it and take it home. But only one bathhouse is open for business. Another is a museum. The rest are empty and crumbling in the steam, patiently waiting for renovation. If you stand on Central Avenue and face the old Harlington Hotel and listen, you can hear the ghosts of Hot Springs arguing about what might have been.
It'd be the first competition that Las Vegas has had, because we have everything that they don't have, everything. But that's the way it is, and it makes you feel bad too, because we had a chance to really make a city out of this place, and it was really going to be something. But anyway, that's it.
All the money people and the big tippers and big spenders quit coming to town. It was over. Before that, you could ride down Central Avenue, be casually going down Central Avenue, look over here, there's a movie star walking down the sidewalk like anybody else. It was kind of like we were the center of the world.
The aura surrounding Hot Springs has somewhat disappeared. The kind of feeling that people have when they hear the name Hot Springs. That a lot of the excitement has been lost.
We remember that fondly, that we've forgotten the control, we've forgotten the corruption, we've forgotten the really open immorality. Now, everybody's immoral sometime, I guess, but when it's institutionalized Let's just say to people.
They say, oh boy, things aren't like they used to be. Well, I got news for you, and they never were. I tell you, when they want the good old days, they don't know what they're talking about. I think that people are looking forward and not backward. I don't think they spend too much worrying about the past, except they don't want to repeat it.
Hot Springs never had much industry, and so we've had to rely on the visitors, and we still rely on them. They come by the droves. They're coming in greater numbers every year. If you go downtown during the months of June and July and the early part of August, you'll notice how crowded the streets are. They're not vacant. If Leo McLaughlin walked out on the Arlington Hotel and fired a Winchester down Central Avenue, he'd hit somebody. This is a good time. This is a good time.
Major funding for this program is provided by the Winthrop Rockefeller Foundation and the Morris Foundation. Additional funding is from the C. Lewis and Mary C. Cabe Foundation and the Monroe Foundation. Copies of this program are available by calling AETN Membership Services, 1-800-662-2386. A free educator's guide for grades 5 through 12 is also available by request.